So what's going on, guys? DIY Dan here again, and this is another mechanical video. In this video, I'm going to be working on a 2010 Mercury Grand Marquis with the 4.6 liter V8 engine. So basically what was going on with this vehicle is my mom complained that it stalled on her 3 or 4 times while she was driving. The AC was not blowing cold and the temperature was running a little hotter than what it normally does. My mom stated that the temperature was getting hotter than what it is in this video clip. I just did not let it get any hotter than that. The first thing I noticed when taking a look at it is that the idle would fluctuate drastically and the AC compressor was kicking on and off a lot more than what it should. And when the AC would cycle on, that's when it would drop the engine RPM and almost stall. Every time the AC engages, you can see it's almost ready to stall. Soon after that, I realized that the engine fan was not coming on when the AC was coming on, which explained a lot. It explained why the engine was running hotter than what it normally does. It also explained why the AC compressor was kicking on and off a lot more than what it actually should have been, because without the airflow being drawn across the condenser, it was probably spiking the high side pressure, which was shutting down the AC compressor. So at this point, I decided to start checking power and ground going to the fan control module, which is mounted to the fan shroud. I disconnected the 3-wire engine harness that was going to the module. And right here, I'm using my power probe, which is basically a circuit tester, to check power and ground to the wire connections on that pigtail. So basically what I ended up having is I did have a main power and a main ground going to that electrical pigtail. Now, because I wasn't exactly sure how the control actually worked, what I ended up doing is just running a straight power and ground and bypassing that control module straight to the fan. So here's the footage of me doing that on the vehicle. AC's blowing nice and cold now. There was no longer a fluctuation in the idle and the temperature was staying below the half mark. By bypassing the fan control module and everything basically going back to the way it should, this told me I either have a problem with the control circuit going to that module or the fan control module was bad. So real quick, I'm going to show you how I bypassed that fan control module with a little bench test here in case you want to do that on the vehicle. So I have the fan clamped to the table and I'm using a couple jumper wires, one to the positive and one to the negative on the battery. And you can see that I'm connecting the ground right now and the fan is coming on. And here's a little better explanation of how I actually did it. So basically what I did here is I just have 2 inline fuses with a nice heavy duty gauge wire, and I put male spade connectors on each end of those, which is basically sliding right into the female spade connector on the connector going to the fan. And then I just used a heavy duty jumper wire and hooked that to the other end of my inline fuse. This adds circuit protection, so you don't have to worry about melting anything down. If it overloads it, it's simply going to pop the fuse and nothing gets damaged. And then I'm obviously running a power and a ground. Red is the power, black is the ground. Now, if you're wanting to do this, make sure that the jumper wires you're using have the same gauge or larger gauge of wire than what the actual fan is using in order to operate. If you end up using a smaller jumper wire, you can melt out that wire because that smaller wire cannot handle the amount of amperage that is needed to run the fan. Now, when I did this test on the actual vehicle, I actually ran the vehicle for probably around 5 to 10 minutes. And I'm going to show you what happened when I went to disconnect my bypass. And I'll apologize for my mom. She didn't realize I was actually talking to my phone and not her. I did.
Yeah.
But this isn't, so right here you can see that's getting really hot, and it's hot to the touch right now actually. So I think the fan is overloading and it's kind of melted that shit out. That's hot. Son of a bitch.
That would make it run hot. That's for sure.
Ow. Now, while I had the engine fan bypassed in order to keep the engine running cool, I did want to check and make sure I was not losing my ground or the main power going to the cooling fan module. And my ground and my main power stayed consistent during that. I did try testing the control, but that thing was kind of all over the place with what it was giving me. And I believe that is because it is a variable speed fan, and depending on what the ECM is telling it to do is going to depend on what type of a signal is going to that control. Now, to the best of my knowledge, with what I tested, I did figure it was the engine fan control module that was the problem. However, because this wiring got so hot when I was bypassing it, and the electrical connector end for the fan going into the module looked like it had gotten hot and was starting to melt, I just decided to replace the cooling fan assembly which came with the module. Because when electrical connectors start showing signs like these ones did, even though the fan was still coming on when I was bypassing it, obviously it's pulling more amperage than what it should, because that's the only thing that will create that much heat to do that to those connectors, besides a loose connection. So you could replace the module, and then a month later the fan's going to go out anyways, or worst case the fan's going to go out and heat up and destroy another module. Now keep in mind, I wasn't 100% sure it wasn't the wiring going to the control for the module. However, because I was getting some type of a signal out of that wire, I was pretty sure that there was a signal going to it. If I would have had an OL or an open going to that control wire, then I would have started looking at that control wiring circuit. Now, if you are planning on just doing the module versus doing the entire fan assembly, and your connector looks like this, then that pigtail end absolutely needs to be replaced before reassembly. Otherwise, you're just going to destroy another module. Luckily enough, they do make replacement electrical connector ends. Basically, all you have to do is cut off the old electrical end and then splice the new one back together using butt connectors, and you're good to go again. Now, luckily enough for me, the only end that was messed up was the one between the module and the fan motor, which I was getting brand new with the fan assembly. The one that was coming from the engine harness going to the fan control module was still in good shape, so I did not need to replace it. So one thing that I did find that could have led to a premature failure of this fan motor and the module, because my mom did have this replaced about 3 or 4 years ago, is that the locking clip that holds the connector from the fan motor into the module was broken. Now, whether this was done at the time of replacement or whether it happened afterwards from just getting dry and brittle, but basically what can happen is that pigtail is then allowed to back out, which could have caused the heat that caused that pigtail to melt down and caused the failure of this part. So that's pretty much going to cover the diagnostic side of this video. I will put the links to this pigtail end kit along with the module alone and the fan assembly, along with some tools that might make this replacement go a little easier for you, in my description in case you want to get any of those coming. Now let's get to it. So the first thing I'm going to show you real quick is how you can just replace the module if that's the route you want to go. All you have to do is disconnect the engine harness pigtail from the one side of the fan control module, and then go ahead and disconnect your fan pigtail from the other side of the fan control module. After that, all you have to do is remove one screw. Now, I just used a pair of channel locks in order to loosen this screw, because from what I saw, it was an inverted Torx, and I did not have that at the time of doing this. Then you should be able to lift that module up and out of the fan shroud. When going back together, there are some tabs on the fan control module that will slide into some slots on the fan shroud, and then you're going to put that screw back in and tighten it down, make the 2 electrical connections, and you're done. And that's all there is to it. Now I'm going to go into how to replace the whole fan assembly. Using a 5/16 socket on my little 3/8 impact, I removed the bolt that was on the overflow bottle and the one on the power steering reservoir. Then I removed the clamp for the overflow hose going from the top of the radiator to the overflow bottle. Usually these are a spring clamp, and you just need to squeeze the ends together in order to spread the clamp open so you can remove it from the hose. This small hose did not want to play nice as far as pulling it off of the overflow bottle. Usually when you just twist the hose and pull at the same time, it comes right off. I could not get it to twist off by hand, so then I grabbed my pliers, lightly squeezed the hose, twisted it to break it free from the hose barb on the coolant reservoir, and then pulled lightly on it while twisting it. Now, because I didn't have supplies like a drain pan or anything like that, I was trying not to remove the lower hose off of the overflow bottle. I was really hoping that I would be able to get that fan shroud assembly out without having to remove the overflow bottle completely, even though that didn't end up happening. So at this point, you would want to remove the lower hose as well. and remove the coolant reservoir completely from the vehicle. The power steering reservoir will also just basically lift up and you can put it off to the side. Then you will need that 5/16 socket again. There is one bolt on each side about a quarter of the way down the shroud that you need to remove. And surprisingly enough, that's the only bolts you will have to remove in order to remove this fan assembly from the vehicle. You will need to unplug the harness from the module. On the electrical connector that's coming from the engine harness plugging into that module, there is a plastic tab that you will need to squeeze in order to lift that plastic tab up and over the locking tab that is on the module. While squeezing that tab, just wiggle and pull on that connector end and it should unplug off of the module. Underneath the coolant reservoir, there is also going to be two tranny cooler lines that you will need to unclip out of the fan shroud in order to remove the fan assembly. Now, because I decided not to remove the lower hose off of the coolant reservoir and get it out of the way at the beginning, this proved to be much more difficult because I did not have much room to work. When trying to remove tranny cooler lines like this, I find the best tool to use is actually a pair of lock ring pliers, because as you squeeze the handle, it actually spreads the plier opening, which pushes the two locking tabs away from each other, and you can pull those tranny lines right out of those locking clips. However, since I did not have my lock ring pliers at the time of doing this job, what I ended up doing is just taking a pair of regular pliers and breaking those locking clips off by squeezing them together with a regular set of pliers, because they were so old and brittle that they basically just broke off, which allowed me to remove the tranny cooler lines. And because the fan assembly came with new locking clips to hold those tranny cooler lines, I didn't have to worry about breaking them. Those lock ring pliers work great to spread open that locking clip in order to pull the tranny cooler lines out, but you can also use a flathead screwdriver or anything else that you can use to accomplish the same thing. The only other thing you need to do is lift the lower radiator hose up and off of a lower support bracket that is attached to the bottom part of the fan shroud. If you choose, you can also remove this bracket by squeezing the two plastic tabs inward and then go ahead and pull it out. I did not remove this during disassembly and I really didn't have a problem getting the fan assembly out. But if you want to give you a little bit more room to get it out, you can. Now once again, because I did not remove the coolant overflow bottle, I thought I had enough room to get this fan assembly up and out of there, but I did not, and I fought it for quite some time. I even ended up pulling off the upper radiator hose to get it out of the way, and I still barely had enough room in order to pull this fan assembly out from the vehicle. After removing the upper radiator hose, I did barely have enough room in order to get this fan assembly up and out of the vehicle. And the extra 1 gallon of coolant it would have cost me to just remove that overflow bottle would have been well worth it, because this was very frustrating and time consuming. Before ever going to just install your new part, make sure it matches up to the old part identically. You want to check items like the electrical connection, make sure it's the same, make sure your mounting holes are the same between the two, and that the fan size and the overall size of the product is the same as well. Because it's way easier to return something when they see you haven't tried to install it already. So right here I was trying to get the new fan assembly in, so I had some help with holding the upper radiator hose out of the way and the coolant overflow, and I still could not get that cooling fan assembly to go in. And after fighting it for a couple more minutes, I finally decided I needed to remove that coolant overflow bottle, which is what I should have done in the first place. So right here I just used the regular pair of pliers again in order to squeeze that spring clamp and then pull it down past the hose barb and then twist and pull on the hose in order to remove it. Then I just tipped it up to save as much coolant as I could and set it off to the side. And what do you know, after removing that, it dropped right into place without a problem. There are two tabs on the radiator that the fan assembly slides into at the bottom to hold it in place. Once the bottom is slid into place, then go ahead and start the bolts on the side of the fan shroud assembly and tighten those down. Keep in mind when tightening these down, they're not a very big bolt and they're just going into a metal insert, so you do not want to over tighten them and strip them out. As soon as you've got the fan assembly in place, I highly recommend go ahead and put the tranny cooler lines and snap those back into place in the holding clip, because I actually forgot to do this until after the overflow bottle was back in, which made it much more of a pain in the ass. And all you have to do for those is line them up, push them in, and they will lock into place. Once I had the fan assembly tightened down to the radiator, I went ahead and set the power steering reservoir in place. There's a hole in the fan shroud that the bottom part of the power steering reservoir sits in, and then there is one bolt to hold it in the top. And just like the bolts that held the fan shroud basically to the radiator, you want to be careful with tightening this down as well, because once again, it is just a metal insert that it's threading into. Once that was tight, I went ahead and reinstalled the upper radiator hose. And I will tell you that if the coolant reservoir bottle is off, you probably don't have to remove the upper radiator hose in order to get the fan assembly out. I just slid that back into place and then reinstalled the clamp using that pair of pliers. The lower radiator hose support bracket just snaps into place in the bottom of the fan shroud. You should hear the plastic clips snapping into place, telling you you are secured correctly. I tried putting it in from the top side, but I couldn't get a visual on the hole and just couldn't quite get it snapped in properly. So I did end up having to go underneath the vehicle in order to pop it in place. Once that bracket is snapped into place, just lift the lower radiator hose up on top of it to help support it. Next, I went ahead and plugged the engine harness back into the fan control module. When plugging in electrical connectors, you should hear the detent of that plastic tab locking over that locking tab on the module, so you know that it is locked in properly and not going to vibrate loose over time. Now, the other reason I didn't want to pull the coolant reservoir bottle out is because I felt it was going to be kind of a pain in the ass to hook up that lower hose again. And I was correct on that. It wasn't so much putting the hose on the reservoir tank as much as it was having the room to get in there and get that spring clamp back up to where it should be to hold that hose in place. And there was actually quite a bit of room. For whatever reason, I was just on the struggle bus a little bit with this one, and prompted me to actually buy a special set of tools for these style of clamps that might make it easier the next time I encounter this. Now, just like the power steering reservoir, there is a little tab on the bottom of the coolant reservoir bottle that fits in a hole in the fan shroud. You're going to set that in place and then go ahead and put the bolt in to hold the top of the coolant reservoir to the fan shroud. Then carefully tighten down that bolt and go ahead and put that small hose going back to the coolant reservoir and put the spring clamp back to hold it. Then go ahead and remove the overflow bottle cap so you can top it off with coolant. When topping off any coolant reservoir bottle after there's a possibility there might be an air pocket in there, I like to fill it all the way to the top, and then I actually like to squeeze the upper radiator hose several times, and you will actually see any air bubbles working out of that system as you squeeze it, because that will help remove any air pockets that might be trapped in that system from cracking the seal on it. When topping off the coolant, make sure you match the coolant that was already in the system. I'm actually using a universal gold coolant that will mix with either the green or the red. Once working as many of the air bubbles out as I could by squeezing that upper radiator hose, I went ahead and put the cap back on and started the engine. As soon as the engine was running, I did turn on the AC because that basically forces the fan to engage to make sure everything was working appropriately. I did run the engine for about a minute, and I squeezed that upper radiator hose some more just to see if I could work any more air pockets that might be stuck out of the system. Then I did shut it down one more time and check the coolant and top it all the way off to the top one more time. Then took it for a test drive, got it up to temperature. Once getting it up to temperature, I did drive it around a little bit longer just to make sure it wasn't going to overheat for any reason. Then took it back, let it cool down, and did double check the coolant level one more time just to be 100% sure that it was topped off completely. And that's about all there is to it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and it gave you some good information. If so, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate it. The whole concept of my channel is to give you guys the most information in the least amount of time as possible so I don't waste your time. And I hope to see you next time. Have a good one. Later.